WB. Be yourself, see yourself, this is a show my people. Believe our hopes are to needless reason. Nobody feel left out, is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's all we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes, WB. And all the things that must be happen like God blue skies. And nothing make people get victimized. Let's work together for better, we got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put the time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice of opinion and place your calling. WB. Get up, make every day count. Don't waste it, people. Do your part, play your role, get where you need to. You can tune in from work or in your vehicle. If you got a problem, pick up the phone. Why wait till the time? Call in, it's a show with no matter even if you're at home. Just call in. WB. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put the time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice of opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself, this is a show my people. Believe our hopes are to needless reason. Nobody feel left out, is the vibe with the let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's all we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes, WB. And all the things that must be happen under God blue skies. And nothing that people get victimized. Let's work together for better, we got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put the time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice of opinion and place your calling. WB.
All right, welcome. This is WUB Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes on a Friday morning, the second day of May 2025. And we welcome you to the program this morning. I'm Nuri Muhammad, and we, as usual, have something lined up for you today that we're sure that you will stay engaged. We normally go through certain steps before we get to the main course, which is a little after 7 o'clock. We bring you up to date on the weather. This morning we have Crystal Rosales that will give us an update. And then we'll give you the news package prepared by our news center. Ms. Rosales?
Good morning. Mainly fair weather continues over the country. In the 24-hour forecast, skies will be sunny with a few cloudy spells today and then clear to partly cloudy tonight. Shower activity will be isolated, and then high temperatures will reach around 87 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 94 degrees Fahrenheit inland, and then 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the mountains. Low temperatures for tonight will reach around 80 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 70 degrees Fahrenheit inland, and then 65 degrees Fahrenheit in the hills. Winds over the open sea will be from the east at 10 to 20 knots, while sea conditions will be light chop to choppy. And then low tides occur at 6:37 this morning and at 8:58 tonight. High tides at 12:59 this afternoon and then at 3:17 tomorrow morning. The moon will rise at 9:58 this morning and then set at 11:39 tonight, while sunset is at 6:30 this evening and sunrise will be at 5:25 tomorrow morning. Then in the extended forecast, generally fair conditions with only isolated showers, if any, are expected for Saturday and Saturday night. And in the fire risk forecast, the risk for forest or brush fires will remain moderate to high. And this has been this morning's weather report from the National Meteorological Service.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. Creme FM presents the news. Informative, accurate, current information, local and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news.
The Belize National Teachers Union, BNTU, will protest against the government for 5 demands to be met. This was the decision taken. No. Belize National Teachers Union, BNTU, will protest against the government for 5 demands to be met. This was the decision taken by the majority vote during a countrywide branch meeting on Wednesday. The results were made known via a letter from the national president to the membership. She informed that over 2,500 members voted to demonstrate in a first phase if their demands are not met. That will escalate to a 2-day national shutdown in phase 2, and then a full-blown strike in phase 3. Among other things, the BNTU is asking for an 8.5% salary increase, an increase in the minimum wage to $6, and an increase in the transfer grant from $1,200 to $1,500. The union's Council of Management will now meet to decide when the demonstration will be held. BNTU District Branch President provides examples of teachers' issues with salary. In related news, when we spoke with Coral Lord, the Belize District Branch President of the Belize National Teachers Union, she shared one example of a teacher who is facing continued breakdowns in the payment of her salary due to issues with the processing of her teacher's license.
Yes, we have teachers who have been impacted. In fact, I had a member whose license had expired, but that member got the renewal of the license before the expiration of the previous license. But because information is not readily shared between those responsible for payroll, that member was taken off payroll despite having a valid license at this time. So those are some of the things that our national president spoke to when she did her wrongs in the media, her last wrong in the media, because we have an agreement with the government to ensure, with the Ministry of Education per se, to ensure that this does not happen. When a teacher license is in process, we had asked that the teacher be retained because the teacher is still teaching, the teacher is still working. As long as they meet the requirements to maintain that license, we ask that that agreement be honored.
A man was killed after 8 last night on Coney Drive in Belize City on Labor Day. He was shot multiple times to the body and died at the scene. We will have more details on this story in our subsequent newscast. Residents of Hamburgers Key have been calling for Cayo Rosario development to be halted. They and other stakeholders are worried about the project, which includes overwater structures. It is believed the works could harm the ecosystem of the Ho-Chan Marine Reserve, whose water surrounds the Keys. During the UDP press conference on Tuesday, UDP Senator-designate Gabriel Zetina, who lives on San Pedro, said the development could damage the environment and also affect tourism industry.
Long before Belize gained its independence, and I'm talking about as far back as 1969, when Florida Audubon Society pledged to preserve the bird species at Cayo Rosario. You could see from then that efforts were already being taken to protect this delicate ecosystem. So it wasn't by accident, because the people then recognized that this area was a sanctuary. But somewhere along the way, and I will be specific, in July of 2007, under a questionable government at that time, questionable decisions were made regarding Cayo Rosario. And it transitioned from bringing protected public land into the hands of private entities. And now we're seeing the consequences of that short-sighted government. We welcome investors who respect our environment and honor our protected areas, who understand that no short-term profits should never come at the cost of long-term suffering and destruction.
Zitina called on the government to acquire Cayo Rosario, saying that the precedent has already been set with the Stake Bank acquisition.
We're giving the government two clear options. Option one, the way they've been handling things. The government can continue siding with the developer and de-reserve the area and prepare to face the full wrath and resistance of the people who elected them into office. Or option two, correct your mistake, Mr. Prime Minister. The same mistake you made as Minister of Natural Resources, and now again as Prime Minister. How? By acquiring Cayo Rosario and returning it to its people. If the government found the will, the funds to acquire Stake Bank, then surely they can do the same for Cayo Rosario. Whether, I have to give this government all the answers, but here it goes. Whether through compulsory acquisition, negotiating directly with the developers, or seeking legal process. But we must reclaim this land for the sake of the marine reserve that surrounds Cayo Rosario.
Earlier this month, we reported the issue surrounding Belmopan Market Plaza. The owner of the market, David Zabani, told the media that he had signed a 30-year memorandum of agreement with the former Belmopan mayor, Sharon Palacio, to pay $30,000 a year as a blanket trade license for vendors at the market. The Belmopan City Council recently approached Mr. Zabani, saying that the MOU is no longer valid and they are requiring individual vendors to pay their own trade license. On Tuesday, Belmopan Mayor Pablo Kawich spoke with our colleagues at Plus TV and said that he met with Zabani to discuss the issue further.
I met with Mr. Zabani, I think about a week and a half ago, a couple days after I met with Honorable Mira to update him on where we were and what was the situation. As explained to Mr. Zabani, I think there was a misconception where he felt that we were trying to attack his business and we were trying to take over the market. We have no interest in that. As I explained to him, what our goal was and has always been is that we are trying to ensure that the vendors are operating legally. That is something I believe I have harped on throughout our term so far, ensuring that things are happening legally. And I went as far as to break down the method of the approach that we're recommending for the vendors. It would be a case where these trade licenses would be paid directly to the council. It is a $300 a year fee for a peddler's license, and specifically a peddler's license because these vendors are not associated to a physical address. We are flexible enough to allow a payment plan for these trade licenses because we understand the financial complications that these vendors sometimes have.
Mayor Kowich explained that what Zabani has been paying was basically a type of landlord trade license, and that the vendors need to pay their individual trade license to be able to conduct business within the market.
That 30,000 a year was also something discussed with Mr. Zabani. We expressed to him that due to the misconception that existed initially, we were going to revisit and properly calculate the fee which he was supposed to be paying, because what he was supposed to be paying was a type of landlord trade license, since he's providing space. Does Plus TV own the land where you operate from right now? And do you have to pay a trade license?
Yes.
Yes, you do. It doesn't matter where you are operating from, private or public land. The trade license is the legal authority for you to be able to process business transactions within a municipality.
And that's our news package for this morning, the second day of May 2025. There's more news coming up after the program called Morning Stew that comes on right after our WUB. That update will be around 12 o'clock this afternoon. There's one at 3 o'clock and a full news broadcast at 5:15, all this on Creme Radio. Here on XTV, we bring you the entire news broadcast at 6 o'clock this evening. It's now 5 minutes to 7 o'clock. Our guests are already here, so we'll take a short break and come back, and we'll begin our conversation for this morning.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. The news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports.
All right, welcome back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes, and we have in studio a guest who's a personal friend, but highly qualified individual, Dr. Ludwig Palacio. He is the Vice President of the Veterinary Association of Belize, and he's also the President of the Caribbean. He's a Vice President, I said. Did I say Vice President? All right, good. And now he's the President of the Caribbean Veterinary Association. And so he wears two titles. Welcome, my brother. He's my friend, though.
Thank you so much, brother Nuri.
That's most important.
We go back decades.
Many, many, many decades. This is good. So it's going to be a conversation between two friends that we hope folks will listen in and get a benefit from it.
Yes.
So let me start there. What is veterinary, or what does a veterinarian do? Let's start there. Because most of we think the dog doctor, and you know, when we have problem with the dog, we carry on to the vet. But it's a much wider science, isn't it?
It's much wider. It has several moving parts.
Okay.
Of course, attending to animals, looking at diseases, research. There is the concept of One Health that has become, I would say, sexy.
All right.
Where the allied health partners work in conjunction with veterinarians and vice versa. So we can do like joint research with doctors for humans. We share information, in fact, a lot of information, because at the end of the day, we have this connection with the animals, and the animals have connection with us, but it permeates the entire society. If we have like bushfires, for example, the animals get out of control, and then they have to change habitat, and sometimes causes disturbances to neighborhoods, people. So the police become involved, fire department become involved. You can begin to see the integration that we need to have. We have vets who are working in zoonotic diseases that transfer from animals to human, vice versa. In industry, ensuring that your food from animals are wholesome and intact, you know. So as you can see, it's multifaceted.
Clearly.
Very, very multifaceted.
Yeah. So this idea that a vet is just a dog doctor and, you know, not much qualification beyond knowing how to take care of a dog, it's really an understatement about really what a vet does, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And it is on a collision course with the veterinarians, because they know the rigor that they have to go through.
Yes, yes.
They know the thoroughness that they need to employ at all times, dealing with different species of animals, and even the human species, because animals have owners.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Indeed. So you have to deal with us likewise.
Exactly. And
So
sometimes it's harder.
Yeah, especially with attitudes that we have towards our animals. How long is the training for a vet?
Anywhere from 5 to 6 years.
Wow, so it's not some overnight crash course. It's really in detail. And I noticed, in reading up and preparing for this, you have to actually be able to do surgery on animals.
That's correct.
Regardless to the size of the animal, you have to be able to go in there and treat the animal body very similar to how you would treat a human body.
Very much so. Very much so,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. So anesthesia and watching the
And
animal.
that's the thing, most times, especially in Belize, the vets here, you know, some of them are sole operators. So you have to do your anesthesia, you have to do the cleaning, you have to do everything.
Everything.
You know, unlike the human counterparts,
Right.
they have specialists
In
that
each
does
area.
different parts.
Right.
You know, it's way easier.
Yeah.
And I must segue to this. The veterinary profession is at a critical stage, where we don't have enough vets worldwide. The supply and demand are not meeting at all. The vets are getting older, but not only that, the attrition rate is high because they go into depression. I think it has the highest depression rate per profession. So
Depression, you said?
depression.
Depression.
That's correct.
Oh, wow.
alcoholism,
Wow.
drug abuse, the family falls apart. These are all current realities
So is this
of our profession.
But how does that associate with the profession itself and not just the individual's own issues? How does it associate that vets fall into this category of having more depressed vets?
That's a good question. I think in the zeal to excel, to keep your name and prestige very high, some of them can't take the negatives that come along with the profession.
Because you're very much, I'll tell you the truth, Doc, and I'm glad that you're here because it will enhance people's appreciation of what you do. Because I'll tell you, people, myself included, tend to underestimate what a veterinarian actually does. Like I said, we think of you as a dog doctor and only forget the shots and get this and that and then that's it. But a vet is a really highly skilled profession.
Yeah. That reminded me of Tracy Panton's dad, Leroy Taker.
Yes, my friend.
Yes, very good friend and a friend of the family as well.
Yes.
He told me very early on, just about the time when I got married, Tracy and my wife were friends and I went to university together. So a lot of things are being shared now because of this platform. And I remember we had a conversation, a very intelligent conversation. I mean that guy's intellect.
He was brilliant.
Ah, my goodness, he blew me away.
Yeah.
He looked at me and looked through me and he said, veterinarians, you know that you guys are better than us? He said, because people could talk. He said, animals can't talk.
Yeah.
And you guys have to attend to so many different types, cats, dogs, horses, fish.
Yeah.
And he just went on. And he said like this, I want you to go to the States and whitewash your degree. I could never forget that. Yeah, you know, because coming from Cuba also had its own stigma at that time.
Clearly, yes.
Yeah,
Cuba has one of the best vets training in this region. We need
yeah,
to make
you
that
know,
clear.
of course. And that's one of the things that we discuss at the Caribbean level, where if you study in an advanced country, you kind of look down on those who study in developing countries, forgetting something very, very essential. The curriculum most times are shared. So some of these countries have curriculum from Oxford, Cambridge. You know, it's like different shops.
Yes, right.
You go and you shop for something that you want, but in the end, it depends on how you use what you purchase in that shop. So, you know, it's not about the institution that you studied, but the way you apply the knowledge. And knowledge is lifelong.
Yes.
That's the reason why they say practice. Because that's what you do. You practice all the way through until you can't practice anymore.
Yes, yes.
You know.
Well, when we look at, we spoke earlier now, and I have several areas I want to touch here, but let's look at the laws, as you mentioned earlier, when you went to the Caribbean conference, you all were talking about updating laws, because a lot of the laws inherited from the British are outmoded. And it makes me go back to hearing the response to those youths that were abusing the horse to the point of almost death. In fact, one of them died, but the other one that we saw more visually was this boy chopping the horse. And then found out that the law only charges like $100 for that kind of abuse.
That's correct.
Of that animal. And a human being is an animal.
Yep.
It's just we're the thinking animal,
Yeah,
but we're animal just the same.
Yeah, different species,
But
that's all.
he gets $100 charge, minimal. Not that we're trying to send him to jail or persecute him and, you know, put him up for attempted murder or anything like that. But talk about this idea that the laws are not adequate to suit what needs to be done to protect animals.
Very good. And I think this brings us to a point where we must realize that the process of decolonization is critical. This is only one aspect. As we evolve and develop as a nation, as a people with different cultures, but I'd say very good-hearted. Belizeans, to my mind, are good-hearted people.
Yes, we are.
So when we have these type of extremes, it's almost like a new phenomena. And then we get away with it because of the laws in place. So once these laws are revised and changed, then we will have a different impact. It also goes along with developing your nation economically, socially, right? We find that countries where we have less animal cruelty are much more developed.
But why that association? Why, you mean we become a little bit more humanistic as we develop economically, and that we are less humanistic because of poverty?
I think poverty and lack of education, they kind of go hand in hand as well.
Okay.
You know? So these manifestations are things that are closely associated with people who are sort of like at the bottom, if you want to call it that. I don't like to use that term.
I think I know what you mean, though.
But definitely we have a lot of space to evolve, to develop, and be more humanistic across the board, including with our animals.
Well, let me stop you there, because again, before we turn on the mic, you were telling me that a lot of us are unknowingly abusive to our animals. Let's deal with dogs.
Okay.
A dog can't talk, but a dog know how to communicate with its owner if the owner know how to communicate with its dog, with his or her
Certainly,
dog.
certainly.
Right? But tell me about feeding them on time, making sure they get wormed, all of these things here.
Vaccinations.
Yeah.
So even before you have a pet, you should take into consideration all those things you need to do. Can I afford to feed the animal correctly for the rest of its life? 10 to 15 years is a great consideration. The cost of vaccinations, taking your pet to the vet, and a licensed vet. We have an issue right now where a lot of people just inject the dog. No records, no proof, no nothing. Everything is okay when everything is okay. But when things go wrong, they still end up at your clinic. You know, so these malpractices, it goes across the board, it permeates the entire Caribbean. So people just do what they want with the animals. That's also animal abuse as well, you know. And even within the profession, we're not 100% innocent either. There are some people who want to make the money, and they would facilitate, for example, an anesthetic or whatever for a lay person. These things also happen. The pharmaceutical companies, they don't care. They sell to anybody they want. So the control and all of that, those systems.
Does it exist, or
it exists right now in Belize. It exists in the Caribbean.
What I mean by exist is the structures for protecting the animal does not exist.
Does not exist.
Does
correct.
not exist. So there are a lot of people, this thing, like you fall through the cracks because anybody can do anything.
Almost, yeah.
And then a lot of people find out what the dog needs, so therefore they go and buy it themselves to inject their dog rather than go pay $75 for the doctor to inject the dog.
That's correct. And I guess that's another reason why the vet profession maybe is not as attractive as, for example, the legal profession, where, you know, a lawyer can charge a couple $1,000s for a few minutes, hours, whatever. The vet now can charge maybe like even half or quarter of that, you know, and people still complain it's expensive because it's for a dog, you know. So that association are things that we need to change as we evolve as a nation.
What I have noticed, and you know, this is, I would call this television education. You observe in these developed societies the love of the animal, particularly the dog, is to the point where the dog even sleeps in the bed.
Not recommended, but
Not recommended at all. I mean, and this thing of people have their dog drinking out of their coffee cup and
yeah, people take it to an extreme.
really, really an extreme. So I'm asking then, is there something about this affinity to the animal that you can find in developing countries, which are many times European developed countries, this affinity to the animal, to the point, as I said, you know, he live in the house, he can go anywhere, he can jump up on the table, whereas with us, the dog belong outside in the yard.
Yes.
And he can't come in the house.
Right.
But could it be then that what we are seeing, what you're noting here about people's better treatment of their animal, may not have to do with money as much as it has to do with a culture of people who seem more caring for animal? Can you, am I in the right track with that, or correct me if I'm not?
No. I think I see exactly what you're saying, which means that the culture, as we evolve as a nation, will change. And I've seen some changes. When I came back from my studies in 1989, right? I decided to go to Punta Gorda, and people said, you gotta be crazy. You won't make any money in PG, zero, you know? I had to fight through that and stay there up to now. I could have gone anywhere else if I were like money driven, if that was the only thing I was looking at. But I wanted to be a part of that evolution, of that change. It is slow. It's been something like 30 odd years, 3 decades. However, I am certain that the changes are happening, and when history is revealed 100 years from now, I would have been a part of that process.
Yeah. We're going to take our break for 2 cents cam, and when we come back, we'll open up the phone lines, because I'm sure many of you also, dog owners particularly, have questions in regards to your animal, and you'd want to ask Dr. Palacio, and he'll be here. We go to 2 cents cam with Brick, and this is sponsored by Fort Point Security. All right, welcome back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes on a Friday morning, the first program for May of 2025. And we're now joined by another doctor, Dr. Stephanie Novello. Welcome, Dr. Novello. And she's also a veterinarian. And we're talking, of course, with Dr. Ludwig Palacio. And the subject is dealing with our animals and understanding the science of veterinary and what they do for animals. Our telephone numbers here, 280-5848, in the event that you would also like to ask either of these doctors a question. Before we get to this agenda, because this is Veterinarian Week, and we want to, highlight what has been going on this week. But I want to go into, again, something very practical. We are told that the screw worm disease is affecting the crop, I guess you would say the herd
the livestock.
of the livestock. And it's strange because the focus has been on cows and the fact that it would affect the cow industry, that market. But I'm also being told that dogs and other animals can also catch this screw worm. So can you talk a little bit about what is the screw worm? How devastating is this? Why should we all be concerned? And then I'll ask you also to explain about the sterile flies and what does that have to do with combating that disease. Let's start with, what is the screwworm?
Okay, sure.
Dr. Novello.
So the New World screwworm, which is what we have now, it is a disease caused by a fly that lays eggs in open wounds on any mammals. So it.
May I?
Sure.
Because we told them that we open the lines.
No problem.
Welcome, caller. Yeah, do you have a question for the doctors? Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Thank you. Nuri, salam alaikum.
Yes, sir. Wa alaikum assalam. You have a question for the doctors?
Certainly.
Okay.
For many years, I travel and noticed that in Europe and many parts of North America, people keep their animals very close, like their children. They are at their home, they are in their bed, they are out everywhere. So I love animals, I like animals, especially certain kind of dogs. But I don't grow up in a culture having a dog in my bed and I've got people do that. Do you think it is a correct attitude or culture or it's just a matter of two different cultures? Because here in the Caribbean, Central America, where I grew up, I never see people doing such things. Maybe a few people will not know the majority. So you think, in my podcast, I don't know much about it. Is all right to having the animals in your bed and on your table and everywhere, or in a separate area?
Okay. Thank you.
That's a very, very, very good question. And it's difficult to answer because we're dealing with cultural norms as well. I will forward by saying this, that there are disease risks that are involved in that proximity. That's the reason why we have zoonosis. Of course, many people, especially in advanced countries, take very good care of the animals, so the vaccines are up to date. Nonetheless, the risk is still there that there could be transfer of diseases from the dog to you and from you to the dog. So those things would have to be taken into consideration. Again, it's a cultural reality, so nobody can really say this is right, this is wrong, but please consider all the risks involved.
You would like to add to that? You have some people, and I think the caller is saying what we said a little bit earlier. We, in this culture, keep dogs in the yard, but we are seeing now that, and I'm saying going looking at TV, you see people, the dog licking them in their face, they're almost like a kissing the dog. Is there any health risk in that?
Well, yes, like Dr. Ludwig expressed, there are health risks. So it's basically ensuring that your pet is healthy. So you have to make sure you do the vaccinations, dewormings. They also require dental cleanings because they can suffer from dental disease, especially if you have them, licking you. So it's just a matter of ensuring that your pet is healthy, because then you minimize the risk of transmission of any diseases or parasites.
All right. You can continue on the screwworm because it is important to understand.
Yes. So it is a fly. So any mammals, so ourselves included, that have an open wound, the fly will find that area and it will lay thousands of eggs. And then within a couple of days, the eggs will hatch, and then the larva, the worms, will start to eat the flesh. And it causes what is called sepsis, which is an infection in the overall body or in the bloodstream that can lead to death. So this is why it's so dangerous, because it can kill the livestock, it can kill any other mammal that it comes into contact with if it's not treated in a timely manner. And there's already been one death due to the screwworm in Honduras. One was announced a few days back. And there was another lady in treatment in Mexico for the Nuri screwworm. So she was receiving antibiotics and medical care for it. So yes, it is very dangerous, and the reason why it focuses so much in livestock is because all the movement between countries. So sometimes there's illegal movement of livestock, and the eggs can also be in the soil or in the stool from the animal. So when the trailers go from one country to the other, that's another way it can be transported. So thereby all the regulations, all the cleaning and sanitary measures that need to be taken place. And then Baja right now is, working on ensuring that our borders are safe and all the livestock, everything has to be in order.
We are told that we had to make arrangement with the United States to get what is referred to as sterile flies. Firstly, what is a sterile fly different than an ordinary fly? And what does the sterile fly do to this animal that is infected with the screwworm?
So the sterile fly is manufactured in a laboratory.
I see.
Yes, so they are male flies that are, as the name says, sterile, so that when they mate with the females, they can no longer produce fertile eggs. So then you minimize the production of the actual infective fly. So this is why it's very important that we try to get those flies in the area to minimize the flies that are already present, the actual screwworm flies.
Okay. All right. And these flies cannot be, some as though they're being manufactured, if you're saying from a lab.
Yeah.
That can't be done in Belize. Why does it have to come from that jurisdiction?
Well, I think we have laboratories in Panama, I think is one. Yes. But what is happening right now is that the supply and demand, they're having a hard time meeting the demand because it's several countries right now that are being affected on this side because it's not easy to manufacture. You need specific or equipment that we may not have. So this is why we need to get it.
So if this is a sterile fly, it doesn't have any organic birth, or it sounds like you're saying it's almost robotic, as though you're making something in a lab.
No, so basically they're taking away the capability of them to reproduce.
Oh, okay. So it's just taking their ability to reproduce.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it's ordinary fly, but you retract.
Yes.
I see. Okay. You see, I need to understand it from a basic layman position. All right.
But I think can I add a bit to that?
Yeah.
In terms of Belize and our economics, because money at the end of the day is critically important. The farmers, the population, and thanks to this platform, we're educating people that one of the key things that need to be done is vigilance management. If your dog, your cow, your hearse has an open wound, you're going to make sure that it's treated and that the fly does not come infested.
Okay.
So vigilance is critically important, especially at this time. Also, we should try to decrease illegal movements. We have to stop this illegal trade. That's a good way to spread it. And it is an important disease that you should also notify if you see your animal with it. Many years ago, because it was prevalent in the 90s, you know, and then now it has come back. It come back stronger than before. And like Dr. Nevada said, the supply and the demand, it's just not there. So the infestation is ongoing.
All right. Can we go back to, and I want you to go over your agenda for Veterinary Week, but so many questions are coming back to me. You said earlier about the treatment of animals, that we need to know feeding them on time, making sure that they go and get their vaccinations, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And starving a dog, not feeding a dog every day, maybe almost leaving the dog, even though you own the dog, to almost be like on pot liquor, where they're all over the street, they look for food. But you were right there supposedly to take care of that dog, but you forget to feed your dog. That's the kind of cruelty that you're talking about?
Those are all manifestations of animal cruelty. Also, these negative entertainment, but Nuri, there is a cohort of people that have dog fights and weaponize it via social media. They have betting. It's going on right now as we speak. Sometimes these dogs fight to death. All right? So humanity as a whole, I think, needs to do quite a bit of introspection. In fact, some parts of animal cruelty, like in Europe and Spain and so on, they're about fighting, all of that. You know, again, you're dealing with a cultural thing that's been there for years. How do you do that? So it's not just developing countries, but also advanced countries as well, that need to become, I would say, a bit more human. And that animal-human bond will transition, I believe, or is transitioning to a higher plateau.
How do you look at the laws in other countries protecting animals compared to our laws here? We know, and I mentioned this to Dr. Palacio before you came, Dr. Novello, about the $100 charge on the kids that were abusing the horse. And the fact that I think it was the commissioner that made, the former commissioner, Chester Williams, making the point that it needs to be upgraded so that it's not something you could get away with so easily. How do other countries, let's start with the region, have addressed that issue? Have they updated their laws in regards to cruelty of animals? Take Jamaica, for example.
That's a good question.
I'm not sure.
I think that one floors us because we have been propelled because of that situation with the hearse. But it's not anything new. These things have been going on for many, many years, for decades, and they have gone pretty much unnoticed. But the one with the hearse, precisely because Belize, to my mind, is at a certain position in history where we can be alarmed and want to think differently now about animal cruelty. So I don't want to say it's a good thing for the profession, but I'm saying that it will propel us to do more so with writing letters to the minister. We want to form task forces, and more importantly, we want to continue the education program. All these people these young people, to my mind, because they are a product of us, who have did this deed, we don't know why they did it. Sometimes they do it under command from somebody else. We don't really know. But what about making them animal activists? Might sound controversial, but I think that they should have also been a part of the healing process. Sometimes these young people also need healing, you know, and as the animal heal, we also need these people to heal, you know. So I think I don't want to go deeper into that because I don't want to stir too much controversy, but I do believe that the education component is the most important.
You had an opportunity, I don't know if you also, Dr. Novello, accompanied him, but you had a session inside the prison.
Yes, we did.
And do you see that as a unique opportunity to build that relationship, especially because it's majority of young people there,
Yes.
with treatment of animals?
I'll let Dr. Novello go first. I have a lot to say about it. I'm still overwhelmed. The way they express their gratitude for having us, and look at these young people in the eyes, almost, I get really emotional when I see this. Again, because I know that these are our children, and sometimes we tend to condemn.
Most time.
Right. I began my presentation to them by saying that I'm not here to condemn anybody, I'm not here to judge, but I want to increase your skill set, increase your knowledge, increase your options. So after you serve your time, you can come out and become livestock owners, entrepreneurs, make your own money, and looking at opportunities that are connected with an entire farming system, including livestock, including value-adding stuff. You could feed your chicken, then the manure becomes fertilizer for your garden. Those kinds of things were what I spoke about. And Dr. Novello also spoke extensively, and she was also well received by the inmates. So.
No, I think it was a great opportunity because a lot of them were very interested in the livestock or in the agricultural sector, and many of them work within the prison with the animals that are they're herding there and that they're growing there. So I think it was a very nice contribution that they had from us, because they did receive us very well, and then they were very interested for us to go back and teach them more. And I think, like Dr. Ludwig said, it's a great opportunity. So, when they reintegrate themselves with society, they have something to look forward to that they can come and do that will benefit them and benefit the society.
We saw an unfortunate situation. As a matter of fact, it's on the front page of the Amandala this week, about animal was referred to as a pig. Now we're understanding it's a boar.
Yes.
And which is an even different animal. But the interesting thing is listening to the chairman of Gales Point mentioning that this animal was running wild in the village, and that for some time now, because its owner is apparently incarcerated, that the animal is just left to run wild, and it's been attacking, and so when it bore this man here with its horn or with its projectile, it wasn't a surprise to somebody that somebody may get hurt with this animal. Now, in a case like that, can you comment on that? Because, I mean, the animal is running around. We know the danger of the animal. Somebody want to get hurt with the animal. Apparently, the man was taunting the animal too. But the fact is that he get bored and he did.
Yes. You see, again, animal cruelty becomes even more interesting and more dynamic. The care for the animal is critical. That animal should have been confined. So there are a lot of shoulda, so to speak. But I say that to say this. We have to ensure that all animals are properly taken care of. Now, do we have a phenomenon in Belize where sometimes I don't like my neighbor and we have a dispute, I chop a dog, I chop a horse. I've seen that so many times, it's unbelievable. This is a Belizean reality. So, if you don't kill my neighbor, because sometimes your neighbor or your cousin used to be friends, something gone wrong, and I want to make a statement. I'm going to chop the guy's house. Well, now he cannot go with a horse anymore. to his plantation. So the social fabric begin to go into chaos. These things happen. And the only way I could see that mitigated is, again, through education, that you don't do those things, and the fines and the laws, when it's revised, should also be commensurate with the crime.
Well, you look at this idea of a dog cannot talk, at least the language that we understand. They talk to each other, clearly. So a dog, for example, can get away, get out of the yard. In the yard, he's a nice dog, but outside, for whatever reason, he may not even be a rabid dog. He's just one dog where belong in contained.
Yes.
But he get out and he bite you. Can you talk about that scenario? Because that happens so often. You left some part of your gate or not secured, your dog that shouldn't be out, get out, and then your dog bites somebody.
I think there's many reasons that can happen. One could be the character of the animal itself. It could be an aggressive animal. Another, it could be frightened. Some animals react when they're scared. They react with aggression. So it depends sometimes on the particular situation. But at the end of the day, you know, it will return to the owner the responsibility, because it is each one of our responsibilities to ensure that our animals are kept confined, especially if they are or have a tendency to be aggressive or are capable of aggressing someone.
Is that one of the areas that the laws have to be addressed? That
yes.
if my dog bites you, I could get fined like $100 or $50 as compared to $1,000, where we make sure that my dog don't get out of the yard?
That's a good point. That's a good point, and I would want to invite you to be a part of it as first whenever the minister calls it, so we can look at it.
No, but you know, these I'm trying to, from these questions, to deal with practical things that people out there want to know. They may not want to know much about the screwworm because they don't think it affects them. But we are affected by dogs. We are affected by cats.
Yes.
There's the issue of some people saying that some dogs don't like children. For example, they say pit bull, keep a child away from a pit bull, no matter how nice the pit bull is. Is that a myth, or is there reality?
No, it's not a myth.
It's not a myth.
It's also not like very particular to pit bulls, like I said. It just depends on the animal itself.
So it could be any dog?
Yes, it could be any dog, any breed.
Okay. What is it about a child, though, that causes the animal to...
Again, I think that sometimes we tend to be like gung-ho on one particular breed of dog. But like Dr. Novella stated, it's behavioral. It's how the animal is socialized. And oftentimes, people want the animal to be aggressive. And the animal will be aggressive. They want it to be territorial, and it will be territorial. So, Doc is right. The onus of responsibility lies with the owner.
All right, let's take our next break. When we come back, we will try to focus on just clearing up what has happened and what is to happen on Veterinaries Week. We do have another guest coming in later, but we'll take our break now.
All right.
our guest this morning, our first guest is in fact Dr. Ludwig Palacio and Dr. Novello. And she is at the Animal Center.
Medical Center, yes.
Right, which it's here, Animal Hospital here in Belize. And Dr. Palacio is in Punta Gorda. We only have time now to give some closing comments, so we'll start with you, and you could highlight about your week.
All right. So this year we had what we call a Veterinary Week, and we basically had some activities done by our Veterinary Association, the Veterinary Association of Belize. And it started up on Saturday, which was World Veterinary Day on the 26th. And it ends well today that we celebrate Belize Veterinary Day. So during the course of the week, we've been having small get-togethers on Zoom for continuing education, for mental health, for veterinarians, remembering our veterinarians that have passed before us, and just interacting as best as we can with the community as well, and trying to bring more prominent and on the forefront as veterinarians, as a veterinary community.
That's totally correct. I think what resonated with me significantly, of course, the visit to the prison, and also honoring our past veterinarians, all of whom I knew very well. Shout out to Gwen Nunes Gonzalez, who made it really big for her brother. So the community effort was quite good. So I think we have succeeded in bringing the profession to the Belizean public. That's the most important.
Well, you certainly have, because as I mentioned to you earlier, I knew just a little bit about, I know of course Dr. Crawford has been taking care of all of my dogs and my son's dogs, so we have a personal link there. I know of Dr. Chumilio also, another vet, but
he's downstairs.
Oh, is he downstairs? Yes. And then my good friend, Dr. Deshiel, who has passed away. But not much is known about vets. So I really appreciate your being here today. I'm sure a lot of people learn a lot, especially when it comes to dogs and the schoolworm, and generally the fact that your association does exist. We ought not to put vets in a category as though the alone that you do. No, they do very, very important work.
Yes.
It's a highly respected profession abroad. We tend to underestimate you here in Belize, but we appreciate your coming on and sharing what vets do. So Dr. Stephanie Novello, thank you, and Dr. Ludwig Palacio, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Nuri.
Look forward again.
And let's not forget that already one young lady has written an essay as to why she wants to become a vet. So that is a fruit of our labor.
Yes.
And she will become a vet.
Yes, indeed.
I manifest it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And
on
we thank
behalf
you.
of the Veterinary Association of Belize and the Caribbean Medical Association, as well as the Belizean public that we serve.
Thank you very much. We'll take our next break, and our second guest is already here, and we'll be right back.
Ya balis
All right, welcome back. This is WUB Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes on a Friday morning, and we're having interesting conversations about protection of animals and learning how to treat animals and understanding a kind of an area that we take for granted, which is veterinary science. But now we're going to talk about diaspora relations and looking at how our people in the diaspora look at our situation in Belize and just that connection that is formed between those who have left and those who are still here. We've invited Miss Marcelle Catus to be our guest this morning. She has lived in the States for many, many years.
Over
has
50.
Always been active, but she's back home now in Belize. First of all, welcome, my sister.
Thank you
welcome,
so much.
welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for asking me.
Yeah. We said that this is going to be a conversation.
Yeah.
I am going to be asking some questions and getting a feedback from you. Tell us a little bit about your time away from Belize. When did you leave? How long did you stay?
Okay. Well, I left Belize in 1966.
Okay.
Right after high school, my family, my mom was, leaving, and she's taking all of us. So I didn't want to go.
Oh.
I did not want to go. And I remember leaving and going up, getting on the plane and sitting, I think it was 10 at the time.
Yeah.
And as the plane was leaving, tears were just coming down my face. And I'm saying, I am going to come back home one day. Even now, saying that just give me thrills. So being back I'm living my best life.
Okay.
But when I arrived in New York, we went into Harlem.
Oh.
And it was November.
Ooh,
so it was cold.
Yeah.
And I had this impression from home, from people coming back, that, it's all bright lights and beautiful places. And as we drove up, I'm seeing the buildings look like there was a bomb, like the windows are blown out, the garbage can rolling across the street. I'm like, this is where you all are bringing me, But I understand why Mom wanted us to go, is access for further education and for herself too, and to make a better life for us.
Clearly.
So it was not at all what I expected. There were no trees. I was like, no grass. No, I was sitting in St. Hilda's College in the window looking out at Government House and the ocean, and they plucked me up from there, and here I am looking at brick walls, right?
Yeah.
But I started working in the financial district. I worked down in Wall Street for a while.
Okay.
And this was like in 1966, 67. And I was amazed that most of the Afrocentric people or black people that were working down there were Caribbean people. And I was really amazed. And there were few Belizean people working down there. So I really enjoyed that, and I did that for a while. And then I got married, and I went on then to work in different areas. I worked in banking as well as that. So and in terms of personally interacting with a whole different community, of course, which was predominantly white, and it was kind of a little shock. It was a little shock, right?
What was were you saying back in the 60s, what was the relationship between Belizeans over there and Belize, and the happenings of Belize? What was the interest?
Oh my gosh, it was so tight. It was much tighter than it is now. People really cared. My great aunt, where she lived, she helped women who had gone to work and taking care of the children back home. And they worked sleeping, what they call sleeping jobs, babysitter stuff. And they only got like 1 day a week off, and they would come on Thursday. So my aunt would let them come and stay there at her house without charging them for that. And then they would go out and shop and go to the post office, and they were always mailing their boxes. Oh, forget Christmas time. You know, people really cared, and people helped each other. Very much so, much more so now. I think that has changed a lot.
I remember, in fact, I think it was Henry Young and I were having this conversation about how on that day off, there were sometimes 5, 6, 7 women in the living room, sleeping on the floor because, you know, they couldn't go and buy their own apartment or have their own apartment. So they depended on Belizeans like your mother.
Like my great aunt, Iris Lightburn. And she went to live in America in about 1947. So she had been there for a while. And she understood their plight, you know. And you heard stories, and it was just awesome. And people really helped, like you said. And they would send, they worked just to send money home to help their children and their family.
You know that we often blame the breakdown of our family unit on that movement of Belizeans going abroad. You left your picnic, you left it to your auntie or your granny or your ma, and because the parents were in the States really struggling to try to survive, that breakdown took place. And so it is said that when Belizeans started to fall down was really directly related to Haiti and right after Haiti when so many Belizeans left. Do you accept that responsibility in that way, or do you think other things contributed to the breakdown?
That is a part of it, but I don't think it tells the full story. Because from what I know, the majority, I wouldn't say all the women didn't turn their back on their children. The majority of them that I knew took care of their children and sent money home to their significant other or their husband. As a matter of fact, I know stories of women sending all their money home to their significant other, their husband, planning on coming back home. And some of them did. And when they came back, there was nothing. The man had squandered everything. And there were some instances where the men would even report them to the American embassy and say where they would, so that they would be deported because they wanted them to come back home. And so those kinds of things happened. And there were many women that were devastated like that. Women, Belizean women left Belize. They had to leave Belize because they couldn't make a living. Just like the brain drain and people who were looking for education and for a better life. Most of them didn't want to leave Belize, didn't hate. Belize is a beautiful place, but there was no opportunity. So they didn't have, an option but to try to go elsewhere.
Talk about another aspect of this diaspora movement in the early days, and perhaps it still happened today. But I could remember women having arranged marriage to a man that they didn't necessarily even sleep with, but had to pay in order for them to get that piece of paper so that they could start their legalizing process. Did you experience that with some of your friends? Did you know about circumstances like that? And how did it happen?
Well, not with any of my personal friends, but I know of instances, right? That people would, what they say, hook somebody up like an American, and they would pay, $10,000 or whatever.
So much?
Sometimes that much.
Wow.
And they had to live together. They had to cohabitate for a while because sometimes immigration
Would come around.
would come and check,
Yeah,
you know, the
yeah.
apartments to make sure that you live there. So there was a big thing, and a lot of the times it worked out that they got their papers and then they went their separate ways. There was not, and there were times when the situation didn't turn out as well as they would have expected, as with anything else. But that was one avenue that women found. Men too. Men did it too, right? It wasn't only women. There were men that contracted with women to get their papers. To this day, there's still people it's still going on because it's one of the few legal ways of getting your paper, unless you're related to someone who's a citizen or a permanent resident, you know, that they can file for you and you get preferential treatment in terms of getting your visa. Now with this present situation, I don't even know how that is working. But that is back then.
A lot of it probably has dried up significantly now. What about raising children in America? I know you raised your children. You talked very openly on Facebook about your daughter. The idea of raising the children in America and keeping them somehow connected to original Belize. Do you raise them totally to be American and they forget about Belize? How do you navigate that?
Primarily, I think I did it without even being conscious, and it was through food, because I cooked from scratch, just like my aunt did, just like this, you know, the same way we cook. They know rice and beans and potato salad and stewed chicken from the time they open their eyes, and plantain, right? And the other aspect was the music. It was always calypso or West Indian music or, you know, the Caribbean bands or Belizean bands. They know. And as well, I was always, I was always involved with the Belizean community. And so they were always around. So I think that is the way it happened. And it wasn't something I calculated. And my youngest daughter said to me, not very long ago, she said, Mom, she said, you know, the way you raised us, she said, it gave us a sense of belonging. And I think people don't realize how important the sense of belonging is, because being in that environment, it's so fractionalized, there's so many different people, and even if you don't communicate on a regular basis with your group, it's just once in a while, you feel like you have somewhere that you can go, or when there's a party or a christening or a birthday or a wedding, you know, that's when we kind of all got together. But
your issues about Belize now, I know that Mr. Compton Fairweather back in the 50s and the 60s kept Belizeans, especially in the New York area, alerted. There used to be a number that you dial,
and you had to listen to the news.
I did all the news. Talk about that period.
I did religiously. I did.
How did that work?
Well, like you said, there was a phone number he had. How he set it up, I have no idea. But I know, I don't remember if it was like on a Friday or a Saturday, he would have new segments. And you would listen in, and he would update of all the things that were happening. I was particularly interested during the UBAD days, because I was like, dang, I should have been in Belize. You know? And that really excited me to see young people coming up and making a stance and say, we want change, and being bold and being up there, because we were not like that, you know? And with Evan X and Norman and other people, and yourself and people who I knew, I was elated, and I so wanted, I wish I could have come back home, you know? But so he kept people apprised or know what was happening. And likewise, when there were storms or hurricanes and stuff, it was an avenue through which people mobilized, and they could get together, and there would be churches. There was one church in Brooklyn, and the basement was used, and people would bring their donations there, and other people would come and volunteer for hours to sort them and pack them and stuff like that. So people in the diaspora really have a heart and care for love Belize.
Yeah.
I think sometimes some of them feel like they're not appreciated by Belizeans back home.
Yes.
And I haven't really put my finger, I kind of think I know why, but I think that some Belizeans back home look at people who left and said, well, you deserted us. You know, you went away and you didn't care about the country, and now you're doing well. Not necessarily, because a lot of them are not really doing well.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's this, I think, an animosity almost sometimes.
Yeah.
So people in the diaspora sometimes feel like, well, the only time people in Belize need us is when there's a hurricane or when they want us to give something, and they don't appreciate us, right? They just kind of, I don't even say dog us out, but they just blame them for living and blame them for having gone.
Yes.
But for the most part, those people that left for a huge
Mostly
heartfelt
for
reason.
economic reasons.
For economic reasons.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another one of the interesting phenomena about especially the New York area is this idea that the divide politically, PUP and IP, which eventually became UDP, there was always this sense that the majority of people in the diaspora was anti-George Price, anti-PUP.
Anti-PUP.
And so the assumption was, particularly because Mr. Compton was working so closely with Mr. Golson, that it became the diaspora was looked at by many PUPs
as the arm of
this the one extension of the opposition.
Yeah.
And so part of that animosity that you talk about had some political leanings in it.
I didn't think of that. I didn't.
You know, so but the fact that this assumption, and it is a lot of it is an assumption, but it was a strong assumption that the people in the diaspora are anti the government because the government, of course, was PUP for so long,
for such
that
a long
period that
time.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
So tell me about your own experience with that and how you looked at it. Did you take a political side? Were you looking at it through that prism that, you know, this is a George Price and this is a PUP?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I always, and I still do now, I'm a nationalist. I'm not red, I'm not blue.
Excellent.
And I get a lot of problems with that because when I'm around people who are PUP and I have family and friends, they say, you're the undercover UDP. When I'm with UDP, they tell me I'm the undercover PUP. I'm like, why can't I just be non-aligned? You're in this country, you're not allowed to be non-aligned.
No. Did they read in your
chat, they won't pigeonhole you, no matter what you say, right? But
can I stop you for a second and share with the audience that this is the granddaughter of Mr. Albert Cattouse, who was one of the founding members of the People's United Party, one of the colleagues and confidants of Mr. George Price.
Yes, he was.
So that was interesting, wasn't it?
Definitely.
To be a Cattouse?
To be a Cattouse, but then, that's on my dad's side, but then my mother, her mother, who was Doris Belafonte, worked with Golson and Lee Richardson and that faction that was the opposition. I think my grandmother used to be referred to as the diplomat, right? Because she was fiery and stuff. She died early in her early 40s. But so in my house, growing up, I always was around both factions.
Yes,
Or, you know, because sometimes, so then my grandmother was NIP or whatever. So my mom, you follow, you know, behind what they're prayer. So my mom became a big NIP.
Yeah.
So when she went to meeting at courthouse or whatever, I was tagged along. When they had marches through the street, I was tagged along. I remember one time we're in a march with my mom and we passed Freetown, and I spot my grandfather on his veranda. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Granddad gonna see me. And I'm trying, because Granddad was very instrumental in helping me with school and stuff, because my dad left for London when I was like a year and 4 months old. He went to pursue boxing because he was a really good boxer. And he went to London, he never came back. So my grandfather used to help me. He studied.
Yeah.
And when he went on his trips to London and stuff, he would come back and tell me stories. I would go to his drugstore when I wanted a little $5 to go to Shama and buy, you know, their frosted whatever they had.
Yes.
And I used to go with him to cricket matches at MCC ground.
Yes.
I used to go with him to horse races because he was a big horse
you
race
love
man.
Horse race.
Oh my gosh, I do.
Heard, yeah.
Oh, and he had
So you
horses.
really, you have an interesting history there, and a lot of us have that history of part of our parentage is NIP, part of our parentage is PUP, and I love that story about undercover PUP and undercover UDP. You're the sneaking, you forget it.
Yeah, forget
And
things.
believe it or not, it still happens today. People look at you and say, I know you like
I'm
PUP.
telling you, it's happening to me daily now.
All right, our telephone number here is 280-5848. Please join us in the conversation.
Please.
Our guest is a person from out of the diaspora who has returned now to Belize. She's also one of the members of the board of directors of the Love Foundation. She has been involved significantly in helping different areas. Let's take our next break, and when we come back, we'll make sure that the phone lines are open so we can get our calls in. We'll take the break.
All
right.
Yeah.
Are we going to take the break?
You may not get
right, welcome back. My guest this morning is Marcel Catus, and she's giving us that whole personal experience of living in America for so many years and then returning to Belize. Our number here is 280-5848 if you'd like to join the conversation and reminisce a little bit or ask some questions to Ms. Catus. If we could continue along the line of the diaspora today, over the last number of years, governments have been attempting to reconnect with the diaspora. This government in particular has gone even one step further and naming an ambassador, which means we're getting closer to really adopting the diaspora as a serious aspect of our governance process. But there are still Belizeans that are calling abroad who are calling for even more. Some have said we would like to engage directly in the governance process. Some even wanted to go as far as being able to vote here. All right, let's take our first call for you. Welcome, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
And Mom, I'm so proud of you of what you're doing for single parents and what you're doing to help out people that is unfortunate. It's one of a kind that, you know, and it gotta be God. It gotta be God. I'm a single mother with 5 kids. I recently lost my job from the Department of Youth Service after 17 years serving the government.
Wow.
I am exhausted. I presently am seeking justice because after 17 years serving the government, they told me after 17 years my job is no longer available.
Wow.
But I am proud of what you are doing. I can knock on doors now. As a woman that went through so much abuse, I was abused in mountain parish when I was out there with the kids. Physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually. I documented all my abuse and I submitted to the ombudsman. I even went to the Governor General. I even spoke to the Prime Minister.
Hey, caller, I hear you, but because I heard you call earlier.
I'm so proud of you, Mom, that you can help us single mother. The government may not really catering for us.
Yeah, caller, hello.
I remember going to the department seeking help.
Yeah, caller, I'm asking you, caller, I'm asking you.
I'm so proud of you, Mom. I'm kudos to you guys.
I thank you and I wish you luck. I think maybe you should try to go to, do they have legal aid or something?
Yes, yeah.
That try to find legal aid to get your situation addressed through that aspect in terms of your job, and in terms of you having suffered abuse. You may need to get some counseling. There are organizations here now that will offer you counsel, that offers counseling that help you get your strength back so that you can move on with your life.
I heard this caller before, and she's called several times before, so we know her story.
Yeah.
And there is a need. Clearly there is a need, and one of the things that have been discussed is the amount of professionals that we have in the diaspora. Counselors, people who deal with traumatized individuals, but they are very scarce in Belize. And so many have talked about diaspora relations being practically done by those in the diaspora who have professional skills, who would be able to come back home, not necessarily to come back to stay
but
at the time.
Intermittently and like through the summer months when school is out, or when the ones who work particularly in the school system.
Yes,
the counselors who work in the school system and have summers off. and could come down. When I was in work, when I was teaching, I would come for the summers, but I would spend a lot of time at the children's home.
Right, okay.
And I would go there and I would teach the people, try to teach the people who work there how to deal with the kids.
Yeah.
Because the kids were traumatized.
Yeah.
That place was supposed to hold like 25 people, 25 kids. It was over 50 children.
Wow, wow.
And I mean, there's a need, but it has to be a marrying of government and people and the different organizations in the diaspora, the different Belizean organizations now that this present government is reaching out to for help, right? And I don't sometimes understand what kind of help they want. That seems to me that they're looking more for remittances and for help. There are other kinds of help that's available.
Absolutely.
That's much more important, but it's not cash help. And you have to put in your pound of weight too.
Yeah.
If those people in the diaspora who have skills will come back, then they will need to be facilitated when they come home.
Yes.
They would have to have somewhere to stay. Maybe, you know, they not necessarily have to have an individual car or to move around, but they could maybe do a thing where they could carpool and do that.
Yeah.
And then go into the school and have classes and stuff when the kids are out of school to work with the teachers.
Yeah.
Within the schools that are closed up and not being used.
Yes, at night.
You know, even during the day, the teachers are on vacation, the kids are gone, the schools are locked up.
Yeah.
And those buildings could be utilized.
Yeah.
But it will take government into
So where should that start? Should that start from diaspora organizations, or should that be done by, for example, there is a ministry now that has diaspora relations as their portfolio. Should it begin there?
It definitely has to begin there. And they have to go to people in the diaspora and ask them. I mean, I've seen them go around to, and I've been in Houston where, you know, they've had meetings and stuff like that.
Right.
My youngest daughter, as a matter of fact, is the president of the Belizean Houston Association right now. And she didn't even tell me she was going to do that, but I guess she just naturally from what comes out. But, and other people who are in that organization, and even in New York, when I was involved in New York, with, I don't know if you remember, Partners for Development, which was something that Bert Tucker and Mr. Goldson started. We we did a seminar at NYU. Mr. Goldson had come up. Mr. Goldson came and stayed in my house when he was traveling to Africa. He was going to attend a women's conference.
Yes,
and
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember that.
And he came, and I guess his budget wasn't big enough for. So Brett said, "Would you mind keeping?" I said, "Sure, Mr. Goldson." I moved my kids out their room, right? And so I was just thrilled by having him in the house because I could pump him for all kind of conversations.
You could ask all kind of questions.
Exactly. So that was Mr. Goldson's brainchild. Just exactly what you're thinking about. And we had meetings, Norman and other people in New York would come to my house, and Mr. Goldson would sit and tell us, say, "You guys are the linchpin. Don't turn your back on Belize. You have to, you have to stay connected. And you know, you have to push these things." But then as I saw, I moved away from New York to Houston after a while. But then I saw, after I left and it started spreading to different states, the organization became more of a who is who organization. And what actual work were they doing besides giving party and pontificate?
On those in those big hotels.
Big hotels and pontificate who's, I don't know what they did. Maybe I'm not informed.
It's interesting that you say it, because I'm surprised with all the activities going on now with Aria and Miss Pitts and Bilal and so many others who are engaged. I am surprised that this concept of the consortium, which is what you're talking about, have not been revived, because the original concept was exactly that.
Out of Mr.
You're
Golson.
going to get all these talented Belizeans to start engaging themselves back, and it's still really not going on yet.
It was Mr. Golson and Bert Tucker. I'm sure you know Bert.
Yes.
Bert, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Bert Tucker was the one who really Bert Tucker made me, not made me, but talked me into leaving my job in Wall Street and going to work at the UN.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I worked at the UN in a non-government liaison, where I worked a non-government liaison with UNDP. And I said, but they never pay me no money. He said, but look how much good you could do for Belize. And, you know, and I did, and I worked with Bowen back in the day. When they came up to UN Best, I would direct them where to go, who was funding what, how you do it, how you apply for the funding. With Cynthia
I wonder if
Ellis.
anybody is doing that now. Is anybody replaced?
Cynthia Ellis, I worked.
Yeah.
Rhonda, there was
I remember.
I worked with all those people at the UN. Bert used to be behind me. You got it, Dennis.
He was a pusher.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. So I'm saying, and I don't think I'm unique. There are other people out there who can do the same thing, are doing some of the same thing, and want to do more, but they have to feel support.
Yeah. Well, in closing, Ms. Katus, you've given us your personal story. You've given us an idea what it was like to, as a young teenager, to end up in crazy Harlem. I had that experience myself when I was young, leaving this bright, beautiful Belize and then going into the dark, dingy Harlem.
Lights on 24 hours a day.
Quite a cultural shock. But we brought it right up to the need for a bigger effort now on the part of Belizeans abroad and Belizeans at home to just link up. We now have platforms like Zoom, where an educator in New York can have 15 people here and they could do training type of thing. We're at the stage now where if we think and act smart, we could advance. We don't need a plane ticket anymore to say, oh, I have to be on holiday, I have to do this in order to come home and help Belize. I can help Belize right where I am. But it requires a vision on both sides.
On both sides.
And we need to get rid of that animosity, left Belize, never like Belize, hate Belize kind of mentality, which still exists with some people. I know. But I think to a large extent that we've tried to be a promoter of that in this station here to get engaged.
Yeah, I would really, really love to encourage the government and their Ministry of that they're reaching into diaspora, that to broaden their scope and not just only go for, a show and tell. Or have a narrow vision. Talk to the people in the organization. Find out what skills are involved. Try to set up something where they can give back, like you said, by Zoom. I'm amazed at how proficient Belizeans are at computer, better than me.
Well, we're genius
even
when
the
it
kids,
comes to that.
oh man, tell me. I feel like I have to call my neighbor all the time. Come help me with this. They're like, but you made a teacher, Markaya, but I stopped when computer came in.
Well, as we close, we need to encourage this kind of dialogue.
Definitely.
And we need to ensure that we don't drop the ball when it comes to this. For example, the second annual summit. Last year, the summit took place in June. This year, it will take place in July. And it will be in, I believe, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Being organized as it was last year, also by Ms. Supnandan and Aria and Michael Young and all of those who were engaged in putting it together, a very successful one in Los Angeles last year, June.
Yeah.
Well, this year it will be in July.
Yeah.
And I need to tell them, you need to start doing some more ads and letting people know that this thing is going to happen.
I'm related to Aria too. You'd be surprised to know. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We share. My great grandmother was her grandmother's aunt or sister.
Oh, yeah,
but we are related.
Well,
so
after we blood run through one another, you might find you might be related to the Simons then, too. You never know.
You know what I think with that summit, if I don't know how it could be facilitated to come in, because it's going to take finance.
Yeah.
They should bring certain people from the different states and invite them to come there. Instead of they're moving this big body all around all the time, you can do that periodically.
Yeah.
But make people link there.
Okay.
You know, and so that you're spreading, and then they can go back and share it with their organizations, because people who are involved in Belize and organization are not getting paid.
Yeah.
That is their time, their effort, their money, and nobody's telling them thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody's telling them thanks, they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
But when the government is coming, they expect those people to just hop to and do it. And some of them, and the thing about when you have volunteers, you have to appreciate your volunteers. Yeah. You have to show them appreciation.
Yes, indeed.
You can't just take them for granted, because eventually, if you do,
You're will lose them.
They will filter away.
Yeah, lose them. Ms. Katus, I'll give you the final word. We've covered a wide area of conversation, but if you could encapsulate it, I'll give you your last few words.
My last few words is, I am so happy to be home.
Yes, I can imagine.
I live by the river. My property that Mom had runs from the road to the river, right beside Black Orchid.
Oh, wow.
I can lay in my bed and look at the river rolling by on my patio. The howler monkeys are in the trees eating my cashews as we speak, and the mangoes, and the iguanas are running in underground.
Oh, wow.
And I think, where else in the
paradise.
world?
You're in paradise.
Where else in the world can I be? So I love Belize.
Yeah.
I love my people. I try to do as much as I can to help, within limitation, personally, with one-on-one, and through my work with Love Foundation.
Yes.
But I enjoy being home. And I just want to say to people, I'm not political. I am more practical in terms of what are you doing? What are your projects? You know what I'm saying? It's not from the political aspect.
Yeah.
But what are you doing? And how you're gonna get done. So, and I would like to ask people, and I can't tell people not to be diehard, because that runs deep in our blood.
Yes, yes.
But just open your eyes. And I'm not saying from one party or to the other. I say both of them. Look at all of them. Look at who they bring up to present. First of all, into the party, to be at the forefront. What capacities do they have? How do they carry themselves? How do they comport themselves? What were they doing in the communities? How are they working in the communities where they're running to represent? Because when you get elected, your community, your constituency is your first line of defense. And it's also your first line of offense. As if you don't take care of that, and you're looking to get up there to national and don't pay attention to these people, they can bring you right back down.
Absolutely.
So do the work. Be good. Do good work. I love being home, and I love you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Katus. This brings us to the end of our program for today. We want to thank Ms. Katus for coming and just having a grounding conversation. She doesn't represent any organization or any group. She comes here just as a Belizean citizen with an experience of 50 years in the United States and then back home. And we wanted to share that experience, and we thank you very much for being here for that.
Thank you for having me.
We also want to thank Dr. Palacio, Ludwig, and also Dr. Stephanie Valerio, subhanallah. Let me not make the mistake. Novello, I'm sorry, Miss Novello, Dr. Novello, and Dr. Palacio for the veterinary science. We appreciate that very much. Okay, we look forward to seeing you again next week. Belizeans, let's thank those who were in the background. We have Anthony Grant downstairs in the simulcast. Upstairs we had Christy Flowers as our MC this morning. And of course, Mr. Clifton Lewis, always there, well organized, stage manager, song engineer, all around man.
He told me he knew my grandfather. He worked at Radio Belize.
Yes. So when you pass the Albert Catus building, I know it's not even talk about the Albert Catus building anymore. It's like
and MCC grounds.
Digicel and all that kind of thing.
MCC grounds is there because of my grandfather in cricket.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
So there's a lot of history that we don't know about those early people, and we need to. Your foundation as a nation has a lot to do with what happened in the past. So never close your eyes as a young person. Never close your eyes to understanding the history of Belize and appreciating the diversity of our history. It makes you stronger. Belizeans, stand strong and stand firm. Do the right thing under all conditions. And for now, we're gone!
Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice of opinion and place your calling. Get up, make every day.